Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. Today we're going to be doing some watercolor painting together, and I'm very excited. This video is recorded so that you can feel comfortable setting up your space and getting your paints and tools ready, and also so that you can pause and rewind as necessary in case anything that I happen to say or show you helps you with what you're working on. We're not gonna get very technical today. Honestly, I am not an incredible artist like some of my colleagues here at the Los Gatos Library. More than anything, I just really love painting and drawing. It allows me to carve out some time in the day to not think about anything stressful and to just put my mind to an objective and work towards that with no specific outcome necessary. So today, I really just want you to use this video to carve that time out for yourself. We're all very busy with work or school or taking care of the people living in our home. So really try to take this time for you and have fun. I know that not everyone has watercolors in their home, and so but I think that what we're doing can be done with a lot of other art forms also. So just grab some colored pencils or different colored pens or even washable markers or crayons, whatever art supplies that you have lying around, just grab them and create something fun with me. I'm going to be using a really small watercolor palette that I have at home, a pencil for sketching, some kind of thicker paper, but it's not even watercolor weight, so any paper that you happen to have that's blank, you can use recycled paper, just whatever you have around the house to make some art today. I'm going to try to paint a picture of my dog Oliver. That one. We're gonna see how it turns out. Everyone needs some more pictures of dogs around their house, I feel like. So you get to see that I'll have a photo of him next to me, and I'm just gonna use that for inspiration and see what happens. You get to watch how I get there and see if anything helpful pops up as I go along. So I encourage you to find a photo of something or someone that you love, and maybe something or like beautiful scenery, or even just post up in front of a window and take in some inspiration from outside. Just make sure that it's something that really gives you an inspiring, relaxing feeling. Nothing stressful. There's no reason to add any stress into this activity, so just make sure that it's something that makes you feel good, because you'll be focusing on it for a little bit. And then I'm going to share a nice little cheat sheet of how to mix colors for those of you using paints or another medium where you can actually mix those colors. So that way you can see pretty clearly which colors mixed together make other colors. And I'll practice a little bit of that also as I'm making my painting, so that you can kind of see how those colors mix. But I encourage you to check out that link in the description. It's just a really nice visual of how those colors mix together. And with that, I think we should just get started sketching and painting. So go ahead and join me. I'm going to have the camera just on my hands the rest of the time. And feel free to comment with any questions. I'll be around, even though this is recorded. I will stay close and answer any questions that you might have. So I will see you painting. All right, everybody, here we are. We are going to go ahead and get started. I'm just going to show you around what I have. I've got a pencil, so that I'm going to do some sketching. I've got some paper. I've also got some more paper so that I can practice different things. I've got my paints. I've got two brushes, but they're both the same size, so it doesn't really matter which I use. I've got a cup of water so I can dip. Remember, you use a cup you don't care about, or one that is like glass, so you can wash it real easy. And then I've got some paper towels in case I need to correct any mistakes that I make while I am painting. And then I've got my inspiration, which I'm going to try and open here. I'm going to pick a picture of Oliver. He is in the rain. I don't know, how can you see it? Yeah. He is in the rain, standing over a river, looking very majestic. It makes me very happy. It's a nice memory when we were driving around Washington, and so it's going to be awesome. So we are going to try and paint this. I really encourage you to find something that makes you just as happy to paint. And so let's go ahead and get started. I've got a few suggestions that I'll kind of lay out as we go. But the first suggestion when you're doing watercolor or a new type of art form, new to you, is to start with a sketch. It's really important because it lets you see the different shapes, gives you an idea of the lines and the direction of the paint. And so the first thing we are going to do is pull out the most important objects. So I'm going to start drawing the dog very lightly. So it's really important. I also have a pencil with an eraser because I plan to make a lot of little mistakes, which Bob Ross would call happy little accidents. I'm going to start with his face. Now, I don't know if anyone wants to comment here and say how they find to be more helpful. If you start in a certain place when you're sketching, I don't have any great suggestions. I say start with what feels right, and go from there, because honestly, you should just try and find some joy in everything that you're doing. Especially nowadays that we're indoors a lot more, it's really important to not feel like you're cramped up, to do things that really make you happy all the time. So let me just show you where I'm at so far. I have started making the nose and face. I did a little heart for his nose, and I'm just going to go ahead and keep working on the ears. Dog ears for me are always really hard because, especially with this dog, Oliver, they're really floppy. And however, because he's got some Pomeranian, they pop up a little bit also. They're both floppy and popping up, so trying to really decide on the shape there can be a little hard. Another thing, if you're doing an animal, is their fur can be really distracting. And I say that because it changes the shape of the body completely. If you were to see Oliver right out of a bath, he is tiny. He is 15 or 16 pounds, and he is very much a Chihuahua. However, when he's got his hair all fluffed up, he looks much bigger. And so really trying to figure out what his real dimensions are can be difficult, and the way that his hair puffs out around his vest, since he's out on a walk, it can be challenging to decide what shape I want to do, but I'm just gonna wing it. So here's what I have so far, and it's very light. I know we're gonna go over it with paint shortly, but there's his face, and his ear, and his feet, which I'm not very confident in my own feet drawing, but here we go. And now I'm going to add in a little bit of other details. You don't want to go too detailed with the drawing because you want to leave some room to practice with some of the paint and outlining the shape with the paint versus just drawing. However, I feel more comfortable personally when I have more of an outline to draw in. I never was really taught skills for how to correctly draw, and so it helps me to have lines to paint inside of. So that's kind of what I'm doing for myself here. I'm gonna draw his vest very lightly, which covers his chest. And then I will bring some more fur, but I'll do that with paint. I'm going to use the paint version of his fur to cover the vest. Okay. And then he's got a little buckle on his vest, and the rest of that is going to be covered in fur. And then he's got a little more vest here. All right. So here is my Oliver. And it's very light. We've got an outline of the vest. And so I feel pretty good about that. The rest I'm pretty much going to do with watercolor. I'm going to add maybe just his eye. He's got very pretty eyes. So I want to make sure I have that shape right. All right. And then I'm going to do some of the background drawing. I'm not going to go really hard on this. I'm going to do a very light outline because I've got, if you can see this picture, there's the rocks and there's the water and there's the trees. So I really want to highlight each of those things. And I'm not going to do that drawing, but what I am going to do is I'm going to draw very light lines so I know where the rocks end and where the water begins, as well as where the horizon is, so that I know where the horizon is, and then I can fill in the trees and mountains with actual paint. But just so I have an idea of the shape of the scene, and let me draw that out real quick, and I'll show you what I come up with. Okay, and then the horizon, the river cuts through a little bit there. All right, so now, if you can see, I've just added a couple lines here. Try and trace this. Right there, the line with the river and the rocks. Up here, a little slope, and here, the horizon. All right, we have sketched, and I think it is time now to practice mixing some colors. Okay, so we've got a few different colors here, and I've given you a link here in the description that has a nice little color chart where you can practice mixing colors. I've also got one here. It's a little smaller, but this one is very helpful for me. And so I'm going to try and make a color that more closely represents this dog. Now, at home, we like to call him yellow because he looks like a very nice yellow lab color. But he's not bright yellow. If you see, this yellow here is very bright. And this orange is the orange yellow is a little too orangey. However, if I look at this color mixing chart, I bet I can figure out how to make it a little lighter, a little less orange. So I'm going to try and find a color that I know I have on my palette. And all these colors are going to be a little different, so it's hard to say, but I've got yellow. And I think he's like a shade of here. So if I were to mix some of this orange with this yellow, it would lighten up the orange a little bit. And I could always throw in a little bit of white also to lighten it up. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dip my brush in some water, okay? And then I'm going to move my masterpiece here and bring over some scratch paper. You can cut out little squares. I'm going to use this for future projects also, just to practice mixing. So I'm going to dip some water, not too much water, don't want to get it too wet, but you want it wet enough to pick up like paint. And I'm going to grab my yellow, okay? And I'm going to paint that yellow right here. And let me see how visible that is for you. I'm going to paint that yellow right here, okay? And then I'm going to take the orange yellow I should say, because I want to make it just a little yellower, but I do like that hue. And then I'm going to mix that with this yellow, okay? I'm going to do a little more of the yellow in there. So what that gives me is actually, it's not bad. That gives me a nice little in-between. Okay, another thing you can do if you have a little tray like this, it's actually very helpful. I popped it off
it's very helpful to do this also in here, so I can actually dump some paint into there, and this really creates a new color for you. I'm gonna wash my brush, and then I'm gonna grab some of the orange yellow and mix it in there. Yeah. Okay, and that gives me that same color just right here. I know with the camera it's probably not super obvious what the difference is, but for me, I can actually tell that it's really right in between. And because I want it to be a little more beige, I don't want it quite as yellow, I'm going to grab some white. Now, white is really tricky. You'll probably notice that if you haven't washed your brush all the way, you're really coloring the white with other colors, but that's okay. That's okay. And so what I've done is I mixed a little bit of white in there, and how much you want to use kind of depends on it, but I've got a color I actually really like now. So let's go ahead and start. I am going to start by painting this. Now, I personally like to let people know before they jump in a couple of things. Those couple of things are, one, that colors are going to bleed. They are going to bleed, okay? The thing about watercolor is that it is paint that is running through the water. So until it dries, that color is movable, fluid, some might say. And so as I start to add other colors, if the area that I'm working on isn't completely dry, which is totally fine, I am going to get a little bit of bleeding from all of the other colors on the page that are touching it with water, okay? So be really mindful of that. I personally like to start with the lighter color for specifically with this dog. I'm going to try and do most of his fur first, and then I'm going to add in details like his eye and his nose, because those are very dark colors. And if I were to do those first, if I put down the black or brown on his nose and eyes, and then go in and do the yellow, I'll probably end up grabbing some of that black and smearing it through the yellow. And that's just personally not what I want to do with this painting. But it is a good technique if you want to blend colors. So that's a really good idea for the sky, for trees, for the water, to really pull colors from the surroundings, because those things tend to reflect light. And so naturally those natural objects will have little hints of those other colors in them. But for the purpose of this dog, who does not reflect, well, everyone reflects light, but he doesn't reflect light the same way water and sky and trees do. So for now, we are just going to try and keep him his natural yellow. And so I'm really interested, if you guys are watching this, again, I know it's recorded, but I am really interested to hear what you're working on. You could throw in the comments what's something that you like doing. What about the medium that you're using makes you happy? I could tell you that for me, watercolor, it's so, you just never know what the final product is going to be. I hadn't watercolored probably in, let's say, 10 years. And I mean, like, in school, I did some watercoloring, right? And maybe the last time was middle school. And then I kind of just didn't do art for many, many years. And then I started working at the Los Gatos Library. And my coworkers are so artsy. They just love creating. We have a really good time collaborating on really creative stuff. And I decided to try it myself. And I've actually found a lot of joy in sitting down, maybe not even every week, but every other week, or maybe even just once a month, but just sitting down and really putting my mind towards creating something, whether that is knitting, because I love knitting, or whether that is even like punch needle, rug hooking. There's a lot of different things that we can do that to pass the time, but also just to create. It's really important, actually, for humans, generally speaking, to create. And watercolor is such a good way to do that. I say that because a lot of the times we set off to do something very specific. One reason that I don't always stick to knitting is because I'm working on a pattern and I'm working on something very specific to complete. However, with watercolor, you might have an idea, right? Like I have the idea to paint this dog, but I know the colors are going to bleed, the water is going to pull the paint to different parts of the page than maybe I expected. They're going to mix. The shape is never going to be exactly what I sketched, which is wonderful, because by the end of it, I end up with something that I never could have expected that I would have been able to create. And that's a really good feeling when you finish something and feel good about it. Not because it was exactly what you set out to do, but because it was something that you accidentally created, but that you're able to find some joy in it. So you're going to see my neon yellow dog here. Let me show you what I've got so far. Okay, he's very yellow. And you know what? Maybe I did not add enough whites to get him quite the yellow I expected. However, you know, his color is very hard to find in paints, especially in watercolor paints. So I'm going to roll with it. I'm going to go, this is an idea, right? This is an idea of a dog, not an actual representation of this dog, but how I am drawing him. So now that I have that, I started on the face, so it's starting to get dry. My paper is not too saturated, and so I'm going to try to do black for his eyes, okay? Now black, it's very dark, and you'll notice it. If you grab some black and throw it on the page, it is quite dark. So something you can do, I've just put a little bit of black, and you can definitely see how that pops against the yellow. And then I'm just going to grab a little bit of water on my brush, and I'm going to spread that out. Okay? And now I've got too much. I've got too much black sitting there on top in the water. So I'm going to grab this paper towel, and I'm going to dab it. Yeah. I love that. So all I did was lightly lift up some of that color, and now it's a very light, it's black, but it's like a lighter gray black, and I'm really happy with that, actually. I'm not going to worry too much about detail on the eyes. That's just not my type of art. You could always draw something in with pen if you wanted to really accentuate the eyeball, but I kind of like the abstract feeling I'm getting. Now, something that I'm going to highlight here, because I'm going to try and match colors a little bit. His nose, let me see if I can zoom. I don't know if I can. Yes. His nose is really brown. It's like a pink brown. And so I'm actually going to keep this zoomed in, because he's also got a little bit of white whiskers here. It's like old man beard here. So we're going to grab a little bit of light brown. Okay. And I'm going to put that in my tray, because I'm going to mix it with some pink and have some fun with it. So I'm going to grab the brown, put it in here. It's probably all I'm going to need. And then wet my brush. And then I'm going to grab this bright pink. It might not be as bright on your screen, but it is like a neon pink over here. And I'm going to brush that in. Okay? Now, if you look at your color chart, brown and pink are going to make more of like a muddy, sandy red. And because I no longer am worried about perfectly matching the colors in this picture, I'm going to use it. I'm just going to go for it. So I'm going to paint his pink little heart nose, that brown pink color. I love that. I actually really like that. And you know, he's got like this eyeliner look about him. People always say he's really pretty, and he is. And so I'm going to lightly line his eyes with that same brown, because it is a similar brown. So it's actually going to be kind of like he's wearing eyeliner, but I don't care. He's a beautiful, beautiful pup. And because I left this kind of dent on the other side, I'm going to add that there also, but I'm not super happy about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly... one little trick someone taught me is that water with watercolor is kind of like an eraser. So you obviously don't want to flood your paper too much with water or it'll start to bend and get really wet and soggy. But what you can do is take a little bit of water and brush through on a part that you want to really lighten the color that you've added. I had way too much, pardon the truck backing up out front. I had a little too much brown that I had added here, so I just grabbed some water and brushed it out, and it added a little accent, which I'm really happy about. Okay, so I think now it's time to do his vest. If you've seen us walking around town, you'll know he has this bright green vest. So I'm going to try and do that some justice. I'm not even going to bother mixing colors. We're just going to go with my green here. So yeah, let me know as I paint this. Let me know what you're working on. I'm really interested to see what type of art everybody is creating at home. Especially now, I've noticed I have so much more time to think about the things that make me happy, the things that I really enjoy doing, like art, like writing, and even reading. I really don't always make time for those things. But now that we're at home, and we're staying indoors and doing our part, I'm finding myself really enjoying carving out this time. So yeah, tell me in the comments, what are you doing at home? What are you enjoying about your time at home? I know it can be really easy to feel worried, or really just anxious, but you know, art is pretty proven to get rid of some of those feelings by really letting you focus your mind on something other than the things that stress you out. Because if I'm being honest, we could all sit and stress every day. However, we usually do things that keep us busy and keep our mind off of the things that make us worried. And so this is a really, really great tool. It doesn't matter what age you are. You might be 5, you might be 15, you might be 35, you might be 60, you might be 80. You can always pick up some pencils or pens and just create something. It's an awesome way to spend your time. Okay, here's what I've got so far. I have made a very literal vest here, okay? I'm not sure what I'm going to do about the buckle yet, but what I am going to do is I'm going to cover some of what I just did with more yellow, because his fur really does cover, oh boy, really does cover a lot of the things he wears because it's so fluffy. So I've done something that I didn't think I was going to do, but here we are. Exactly how I was talking about. I have added paint on top of wet paint, and it started to make a little bit of a mess. And I just want you to see this because mistakes happen. So we've got this whole situation. Before I do anything else, I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to work on another part of this painting while I wait for that to dry out, because the only way I'm going to be able to paint over that now is once it's dried. So, how about let's work on the trees in the background. Now, this picture, I really love it because it's that really mystic feeling. There's the fog over the mountains in the background, and the trees and the river flowing into eternity. So what I'm going to do is start with the trees that are more defined, and then I'm going to kind of work backwards. And so I want a dark green, and I don't really have that in my palette. So I'm going to take the darkest green I have, which is kind of a blue green. I'm going to put it in my tray. And I'm just narrating what I'm doing, but none of this is something that you have to do. So always remember that you can just try something out, see if it works. throw it at the wall and see what sticks, right? So I've made this green in here, and then now I'm going to add some black. And the thing with black is that it is very full of pigment, and so you want to be really light with it to start, okay? And you're going to see that immediately made it into this muddy green, okay? And so what I can do, I actually like that a lot. It's a very, very dark, deep green. So I'm going to go ahead and start. And these are really just going to be ideas of trees, okay? You're not going to get as much definition with branches and all that as you would with like an oil painting. Roll my sleeve up. But I'm going to go ahead and do the bank here. There's this bank, and then these trees are kind of rooting out of it, up a slight slope. So I'm going to start by just doing the shape and really an idea of what's happening over there, okay? And then I'm going to try and do a little more texturing by just kind of smacking my brush, but not too much of the paint. You really want to do just a light amount of the paint, not too much water, and then just kind of blah, cha, 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 in the shape of what you see those trees as being. Okay. And maybe I wanted a little more of a slope, so I'm going to extend what I've done over a tiny bit. I'm going to paint in that bank a little farther. Okay, I'm running out of my color that I just made, so I'm going to have to make more in a sec, but just so we see the idea of these trees there. Alright, and maybe you can see that. And I'm going to keep going with it. I really liked how I did that color, so I'm going to do this again. I'm going to grab the green first, put it in my tray, make sure the computer doesn't sleep. I'm going to put it here. Okay, and then I'm going to add just a little bit of black, just a dab of black. Yeah, it really makes that darker green color. Okay, and I'm going to keep going. I really like the way that's done, so I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to trace the outline of the landscape there. And you'll see I have an idea for what I'm going to do with these mountains that are a little more hazy in the background, but for now I'm going to do that. Okay, and I'm going to fill it in, so let's go ahead and do a little bit more of that. Now I've got probably a little too much water on my brush, but I'm going to roll with it. We're just going to see what happens, okay? I'm also using this time to cover some of those pencil lines that I had made. Honestly, if pencil shows through at the end, I kind of like it. It kind of shows, you know, my aesthetic for art is a lot more work in progress. I really like being able to see what the artist did step by step, kind of. So I really like this kind of, there's some sketching there, there's some pretty obvious brush strokes. Alright, and now what I've done is with a little bit of paint still in my brush, I've dipped it in my water, and now I'm just kind of spreading the water over here, okay? So I'm actually just literally wetting paint that is already starting to dry, and I'm grabbing it with water and just pulling it across the page. This is a really awesome way to blend colors for the sky also. And I'm pretty happy actually with this. And again, it's really just an idea of a background. You can even kind of see every little stroke that I made with that brush. And I've learned to really embrace the white spaces in between the objects. I think a lot of people, like me, when I first started, I was really trying to fill every empty spot. But that can lead to some behavior that makes you really stressed, right? It makes you stressed about making sure that it looks perfect. And I think, you just got to kind of roll with what shows up on the page. So that's still wet, but what has dried is the dog. So I'm going to go back and try and add a little more yellow to cover some of the vest here, just to give it an idea of being covered by fur. And you know what? I'm gonna stop. I'm just gonna end there. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, so I'm just gonna dry it up a little bit. And then I'm not totally sure what to do with that buckle. Again, pardon the truck backing up out front. I'm not sure what to do with the buckle, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the green from the vest and just fill that little spot in. The truck is gone, yes. All right, there we go. All right, I'm gonna add, no, I'm not actually. I really like how that looks. So let me just show you. This is my finished dog. And now I'm just gonna kind of work around, okay? I'm gonna work around the rest of this. So I'm gonna start with the river while the dog dries because it's the furthest thing away from him. Now the color of the river is going to be honestly very hard to match. It's a very, very beautiful hazy gray blue. I personally am not confident in my ability to match that color. So instead, I'm going to do more of a deep blue that's mixed with some white. Okay, so I'm going to take the dark blue that I have here. And everyone's color sets are going to be a little different, so you just kind of have to go with what you've got. I'm going to need a lot of this, but we're going to just start here. And now that's really quite a sky blue once it's painted down, and that's kind of nice to see. That's also a good reason to have a scratch piece of paper to see what that color is actually going to look like once it is once it's on paper, because it can be really surprising sometimes. And now I'm going to add some white. There's still some blue in my brush, but you know, I'm just going to see what happens. I'm grabbing the white, which is now turning into blue, and that's okay. And I'm adding it in. And instead of making what I thought would be like this hazy gray blue, it's really just making it a lighter blue, which is fine, which is totally fine. I'm just going to go with whatever color these paints give me. All right, so there it is. A couple mixings of dark blue and white, and here we go. Water, I really like to make it obvious that it's water by creating this kind of flowy texture. And you know, I said that I didn't think I had the right color, but you know what I can do is once I have all this paint down, right, I'm going to start deeper here. I have like a nice darker section of water here. Really get that paint on the page. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab water on my brush and pull that paint out. I'm going to do it in these nice sweeping motions. If you have a bigger brush, I don't have any bigger brushes. Again, I'm working with what I've got at home. I imagine you are too. We do not all have an artist's studio, so it is really just up to us to be creative and use what we've got. Do the best with what we've got. So now what I'm doing is literally just grabbing water and pulling the color across the page. And that's actually creating much closer to the cloudy blue that I thought I was going to get when I was mixing those colors. And you're going to get to a point where that color stops bleeding, so I'm going to make some more. And you know what I'm actually going to do? Water is dimensional. It's got a lot of different colors throughout depending on what the rocks are underneath it. So what I've done is I've just added some dark blue streaks, and now I'm going to just drag those out with water. So I'm going to go like this. It's kind of fun if you're painting a water scene. It starts to feel like you're actually running water because you've got the actual water pulling the paint across, and you start to feel like you're building a real life stream. And I'm going to call that good. I've brought it up as far as I can to the dog's face without just painting him blue. Obviously there's some dark streaks here and there, but ultimately, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm gonna leave it. And now, la pièce de résistance. I'm gonna try and make this very complicated rocky texture under his feet. You know, I have no idea what to do, so I'm just gonna try. A lot of us, I feel like this is applicable to all parts of life. Whether you're trying to use a new technology for the first time, you're watercoloring or doing like acrylics or just something for the first time, you just have to try something sometimes. You don't know how it's going to turn out. You just got to go with it. I'm going to start with black, and I recognize that this might be dangerous, but I'm just going to do it. Now, there's a smattering of colors for the rocks here, so I'm going to kind of randomly dot black, okay? Just to give the idea that there are all these dark spots that'll start to appear. And I know that looks really funny right now, right? It does not look what like any of us think are going to be a bunch of rocks. And I recognize that, and I honestly do not know how this will turn out. So let's find out. Okay, and now a lot of these rocks, someone was telling me that one of the most common rocks in California is serpentine, or I don't honestly know the name. Maybe you can help me out with that. So it has this blue-green color to it. So I'm going to mix some of my darker green, and then I'm going to add in the dark blue. It's going to give me this cool aqua color, which I don't know how visible that is, but I'm going to use that, this greenish, bluish aqua, and I'm going to dot the page with that also. You know, a lot of watercolor ends up just looking abstract because it's very hard. Very skilled watercolor artists, you know, George O'Keeffe, they know how to manipulate a brush so that it creates very nice lines. I'm not doing that because I just don't have that many years of experience or knowledge of technique. So I'm going into this understanding that it's gonna look a little abstract. It's gonna look like an idea of the picture that I'm looking at. And so I kind of like that, actually. Again, it still looks like a bunch of dots, but it's gonna start filling in. So I've got the light blue-green, I've got the black. Now what's another rock color here? I'm seeing a lot of speckled. You know what? I'm actually seeing some orange rocks. So, you know, based on the location, and that's actually, I've got a deeper orange here. I've got like a muddy brown, orange, red situation. I'm going to use that. And I'm just going to dot here and there. There are so many different types of geology in California. I'm not going to go deep into geology, although I'm really into it. But the cool thing is that with so many fault lines here, over centuries and centuries, different types of rocks have been being thrust to the surface. And so if you walk along a riverbed, especially in the Sierra or over here along the faults, you'll see so many different types of rocks if you look down and really start to pay attention. And all those different types of rocks come from different levels of the Earth's layers, because all the faults have been constantly crunching into each other for millennia and really creating this cool patchwork of different types of rocks, of different types of things that we wouldn't have thought we would have been able to see if not for continuous earthquakes. Okay, I've added a little more black because the predominating color in this picture is darker, and so I've added some more black. I'm just kind of dotting the whole page now, and I'm pretty close. I don't want to overdo it, so I'm gonna stop there once I just add a little more blue down here, because hey, why not? All right, we're close. I think the only thing I have left to do that I want to finish is just a little bit of hazy blue sky up here, okay? This was during a rainstorm. It was really beautiful. This wasn't in Washington, this was actually in California, near the Oregon border. I can't remember the name of the national forest, but it was in a forest, or a state forest, out in the redwoods. And we drove our car. It was a very big rainstorm, and we were thinking we were going to camp, but the rainstorm had stopped us from that idea because we weren't able to create a campsite early enough. And so we were just out trying to find somewhere nice to see along the river. And we found this beautiful spot, no one else around. And so we stopped and walked the dog along the riverbed. And it was just gorgeous. And so I snapped this photo of Oliver looking very majestic, staring over the river. So what I'm going to do, and this is a technique a lot of people do use, I'm going to do a thick blue across the top. Okay. And then to make it a little hazier, I'm just going to grab water and pull down. Okay. Just really spread that pigment down. And I'm actually going to make it blend with the trees. Leaves reflect light. There's also all these blank white spaces in between the trees. And so as I pull this blue in, it's not only going to kind of mess with the color of the tree, which is great. It's going to reflect some of the hazy blue in the sky, but it's also going to fill in those blank spaces with the same kind of hue of light blue in between the trees, which is honestly what you would see if you were staring at this exact scene. All right, and I've really gotten it wet, so I don't want to overdo it. I want to respect what I've done and not go too overboard. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to pull a little bit of black gray there and fill that in. And I'm starting to think that I'm done. So let's go ahead and I'm going to show you one more time what my picture looks like. I'm gonna point this up at me. Hello, I'm back. This was the picture that I started with. Now there's quite a reflection there. You see the rocks, the river, the trees, the hazy sky, the dog, Oliver, and drum roll. He even shook for you. This is what I did. I'm actually really, really happy with that. I really just kind of did a smattering of colors there for the rocks. I even tried to accentuate the hair on his paws. I'm pretty happy with how the vest turned out even. And with the sky, I really just pulled that darker color from the top to fill in all the blank spaces. And the trees are really just an abstract view of what those trees would look like with rain coming down. And I feel good. We've spent, like 40 minutes here doing some creating and being really creative, letting ourselves take that time to just have that space where we can create and feel good about what we've done. So I'm feeling good. I hope you feel good. Let us know in the comments how you feel about this. Share with us what you've created. You can add a photo to the comments here, or you can even, I'm going to try and post this other places, but you can just tag us in photos on Instagram at @los_gatos_library, and just show us what you've created. We're really excited that you guys are joining us. Please stay tuned to our events on Facebook. We've listed out what we're going to be doing next week. Some more story times, some more art classes, and just a lot of fun. Things that we think that you'll enjoy while you're at home, and that we're enjoying creating with you. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.